See on the log there?
That's deep like this.
Coming up to the highest concentration of low output springs we have here in the lake, there's going to be about 200 or 300 individual springs here below us. 200 or 300 visible springs, I should say. There's actually up to 500 to 1,500 springs in this area, but it's very difficult to count because they're so small.
Yeah, you can see them
so
crystal
together.
clear.
And there's a lot of algae green away.
What is that right there?
It's another sonde. It's the same kind of device, but it's in a different case because it has to collect the water before it can test it. These are entire trees that have been underwater for around 160 years. All that white sand down there is limestone. It's very rich in calcium, makes this water very hard. So as that hard water soaks into the trees, it basically turns them into big rocks. It's similar to petrification, but because it's underwater, it's a process called permineralization.
So those are petrified trees?
Yes.
Somewhat?
Pretty much. Yeah.
Or mineralized tree.
Is it rather
I
blast?
know some people that come pull some of those trees out and they're making a torch. Pull that out, cut it into little sections and so on. Wow, like big time. Oh yeah. But I mean, that's what they do for a living.
They just saw catfish trees and or a cosmos.
They get it out and you clean it all up, so it looks real nice. None of the junk on it or anything.
Below us, you'll see the bottom changes. It's going to look a lot more like you'd see in the river itself past the dam. And that's because this is going to be the riverbed that existed before the dam was built in 1849. So you see there's a lot more rock, there's a lot more sand and gravel. This is what the bottom looks like whenever you have a lot of flow coming through because it pushes all that lighter sediment out of the way, leaving behind this heavier stuff. Coming into this next clearing, I want you guys to take a look at the bottom along the rocks, sand, and gravel, and I'm going to show you something kind of neat. You're going to notice that all along the bottom here, you're going to see these very small black polka dots. See all those down there?
Yeah.
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 These are all snails.
Oh.
I did a very small study in the river just past the dam, and in 2 square meters I pulled up 1,125 snails. I should know I had to count every single one of them. That's a fun project.
Now, are they natural here, or did they get put in?
They are going to be native here. The last study that I read up on was in 1996, and at that time there were only 6 non-native invertebrate species.
Oh, yeah, there's a turtle swimming right there.
Turn that motor off.
Another one? Yeah, another one right there.
Just happen to quite often that people say, "Hey, look, a turtle," and then I get. Oh. The kids don't like that too much. Ahead of us, right out the front doors, you'll see there's a yellow building in the tree line right here. You're looking at the back end of the Saltgrass Steakhouse. There's Joe's Crab Shack before that. It was Peppers on the Falls before that. It's that restaurant that sits right there in the waterfall. That waterfall is actually a spillway for the dam coming out of this lake and going into the river. So that 96 million gallons of water coming up every day is coming out and going into the river itself. That's why it doesn't flood around here. There's an equal amount coming up as there is going out. The dam was built in 1849 by General Edward Burleson to facilitate a grain grinding facility. But nowadays it's just used for aesthetic purposes. Because the
Yeah, fish right there, right?
unique
Oh, yeah.
geography of the land here, the water
These
isn't
have
as
some
affected
pretty,
by it as other dams.
Whoa!
Something.
Oh, I love those catfishes.
The first European settlers to come through here were the Spanish around the 1690s, and then there was a huge influx of Czech and German descendants coming through here as well. So that's why we have a lot of Oktoberfest and Wurstfest coming up next weekend. Just a lot of cool stuff that has a lot of Czech and German origins. But the Spanish were by no means the first people to come through this area and live here.
Fishy down there.
Below us, we're going to start seeing these strings going across the bottom. Maybe kind of hard to see with the undergrowth. But what we're looking at is a former archaeological dig site that was set up in the mid-70s going through the mid-80s in order to determine how long people have been living in the San Marcos Springs area. Through the 10 years or so that the dig was done, they uncovered about 100,000 to 200,000 artifacts. Just this crazy amount of history going back from just a couple of hundred years ago down to about the Paleo-Indian era. Big mastodon tusks, bison bones,
Fishy down
the
there.
remains of these three-toed camels that existed in North America. But the interesting thing is that from the Lake Western era all the way down to the Paleo-Indian era, there had always been Native American artifacts found. The earliest things that they found were very large spear points called Clovis points. Clovis points were originally discovered around Clovis, New Mexico. And those were thought to be the oldest artifacts in the U.S. But after looking at ours, determining their age and comparing them to the ones found in New Mexico, ours predated even those by about 2,500 years. So for 12 or 13,000 years, people continuously lived in the San Marcos Springs area, which is real cool. It's not just that they were here and they stayed, which implies that the water has always been coming up out of the ground here. When we start thinking about it, when we start doing a little research, it makes sense. Even in today's history, we've never seen a drought so bad that this spring system has dried up. Around the mid-1950s, one of the worst droughts in Texas's history occurred. And around 1956, Comal Springs in New Braunfels dried up. They lost all of their water. Ours persisted even through that. So this is one of the oldest continually inhabited, and probably one of the oldest continually flowing spring systems in the United States.
That's another deep spot. Oh, that was
We're soon coming up to the deepest points in the lake.
So
It's
right,
going to
you
be
That's
know.
another big one.
Big mess. It's going to be about 26 to 30 feet down to the bottom here.
That was farther.
The one thing you're going to notice here is that there's a very drastic change. We have this dark plant-covered side. We're transitioning up to this white sandy side. That's because we're sitting directly above the Balcones Fault Zone. If you look over here beside us to the right, it's very broad, flat, easy to walk around on, easy to navigate. This is the beginning of the Blackland Prairies, the beginning of the Gulf Coast Plains. But then on the other bank, it has a drastic change where we have the beginning of the Edwards Plateau, lots of exposed rock and hillside. These two pieces of land form what's called the Balcones Fault Zone. It's the least active fault zone in the United States. There's very little native geological activity happening here.
There's a deep spot right there.
We had a small earthquake south of San Antonio back in October, but before that it had been 10, 15 years for anything significant to happen. We do see some interesting occurrences though, back in March of last year. The way that they measure how much water is inside the aquifer in order to put restrictions or take restrictions off is by using a physical well. That's basically just a bobber that shows where the water level is. During the Japanese earthquake that happened in March of last year, we saw a fluctuation in that well of about a foot either direction as the water was getting sloshed around like it was inside of a bathtub. 15 minutes. That's insane.
Wow. Long ways away. That's crazy.
That guy.
Whoa. That's a big one.
You saw that fish too, huh?
Yeah.
Looked like a big
But that
possum.
should be looking down in the water.
I have been. Goes through.
Who's a turtle?
Yeah,
It's over.
I have hands on it.
Sea turtle?
That's a big one.
She said, my dad should be looking.
These boats have been around for quite some time. This boat was built in 1978. It is our youngest boat. But for reference, we can get here, you can position. You see that there's one over there with a canopy on it? That boat was built in 1945. Wow. That is our oldest boat. Every 7 to 10 years, we'll take them out, refurbish them, make them nice, shiny, and do it again, put them right back in the water.
Look at the size of that boy.
Well, let's
That's been
Look at
done.
the big fish. Had a mouth about that big.
There's a little fly. There's a little baby turtle.
wait. Aw, look how cute he is.
Oh, see him.
Yeah, what kind of fish was that? That's how somebody can put it on picture.
In 1950, we made history by opening up the very first underwater theater. It was basically a big submarine that had windows across the front of it. You'd get inside, look out into the water, and underwater we had mermaids, magicians, clowns, comedians, ballerinas. We had a swimming pig named Ralph. You name it, we had it underwater. Even the very first underwater wedding was in 1954. We held that here. These shows went on until around 1996. About that time, Six Flags, Schlitterbahn, SeaWorld all got really popular. Here's the deal. 1950, swimming pig, that's hot stuff. That's cool. Then you get around to 1996, there's a whale in San Antonio. There's really nothing you can do about it after that. It was fortunate that the university had bought this land 2 years prior, so we were able to remain open as a nature center, basically as an education center.